The U.S. police force guarding Capitol Hill alerted lawmakers to a potential threat against the Capitol Hill building, a plan that echoed the January 6th U.S. Capitol siege, the attack on American democracy's seat. The Capitol Police said that intelligence obtained warned of a possible plot, especially by a militia group.
Senator, we issued a bulletin last night, co-authored with the FBI, about extremists discussing March 4th and March 6th. Is that what you're referring to as a joint intelligence bulletin we released last night around, it was very late, midnight, I think? Yes.
The U.S. Press Secretary also responded to the threat, saying that the White House was eager to work in partnership with the Congress, especially to ensure that the events of the 6th of January never happen again. According to an Associated Press report, police have requested for a 60-day extension of the National Guard at the Capitol. Defense officials have said that the new proposal is being reviewed by the Pentagon. More than 5,000 National Guard members are currently in Washington, D.C. They are all slated to go back on the 12th of March. Meanwhile, security has been enhanced as a precautionary measure, and the House session for Thursday was cancelled in light of the warnings. The potential plot is tied to far-right conspiracy theory promoted by QAnon supporters. It says that former President Donald Trump will rise again to power on the 4th of March. This was the original presidential inauguration day until 1933. What remains unclear is whether the threat will remain as online chatter or will it turn into another assault on American democracy. Joining us on the broadcast is our correspondent Susan Teherani from New York. She's been tracking all those developments. Susan, what does the intelligence at this point say about the threat?
So, Molly, they are taking they're not leaving any stones unturned. They're being very hyper-focused, and what we're seeing is really a sense of security and military theater happening in the nation's capital, with troop deployments, fencing around the Capitol building, heightened security, even security for individual lawmakers. There was a memo that went around yesterday saying that lawmakers who do decide to go to the Capitol building or surrounding areas to be mindful and park their cars underground. The significance of this date, we heard recently from the D.C. Police Department, has taken a step back, has been reduced. As you mentioned, these chatters online seem to have been more aspirational as opposed to operational, but nonetheless, despite the fact that the FBI did say that there was no indication that groups would travel to Washington, D.C. and take part into protests, there has been increased funding towards the police department and increased presence of National Guard troops as of now.
And speaking of the deployment and the preparations that have been made, other measures beyond troop deployment, are they also being taken to secure the Capitol? Even how sustainable is a permanent troop deployment in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, I think that's the bigger picture right now, considering that just a few days ago, residents of Washington, D.C. signed a petition, and more than 50 organizations called for the removal of a permanent fencing around the Capitol building. While they don't want the events of January 6th to happen, the concern right now is that it was the police that had enough funding and enough forces to tackle those threats on January 6th. The problem was management, leadership, and guidance. And I think those are the areas that, in order to prevent a permanent security stronghold and foothold and this fortress that you see around the Capitol building, in order for that not to be in place, they're going to be looking at other measures that will tackle how information is shared across the board between agencies, as they did after 9/11. I think the concern is that, the Capitol building, the America's spirit of democracy, is sort of being undermined at this point, considering that children can't really go around the park and play. Activists can't go and talk to their representatives, and access to government and the people should not be so much militarized and have officials in somewhat of a fortress. So that's the concern that people have.
Susan Tehrani, appreciate very much joining us on the broadcast with those updates. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.